It only stands to reason that 3D printing, or additive manufacturing if you prefer, would find its uses in NASCAR, a sport that measures more than a driver's nerve. It rewards the team building the fastest car, which is very much a sum of its parts, 3D printed or otherwise. So when exactly did 3D printing gain a foothold in this arena?
I would say probably over the last decade, and especially over the last 5 or 6 years. You know, I go back to my last year as a crew chief in 2000, 18 years ago. There was not a whole lot being talked about it, not even sure I even knew what it was back then, but we were really just in 2000 starting to really get into more aspects of the engineering side of our sport. So yeah, I would say over the last decade.
So 3D printing could actually mean a lot of different things. There's several different types. The original one, which is over 25 years old, is called vat polymerization, and it's the warm liquid goo 3D printing. So vat polymerization works by taking a vat of a liquid polymer and then hitting it with either a laser or visible light and forcing that plastic to become solid or polymerize. And so it does this layer by layer. It polymerizes one layer and then it actually raises it upside down into space and then does the next layer. And then it raises it up again and then it does the next layer. And lather, rinse, repeat a few thousand times, you've got yourself a part.
Many years ago, when 3D printing was becoming relevant in our sport, it was just used for small scale items, small rapid prototyping designs, and going from a design to actually putting something in your hand very quickly.
Traditional manufacturing typically is subtractive. It cuts things away. You start with a piece of metal, you drill it, you cut it, you mill it out. Whereas additive manufacturing, you're starting with nothing, and then you're slowly building that part up from nothing. You just build what you need, and that's what you got.
I think it's made a difference in a lot of ways. You know, one, efficiency. You can do things so much quicker. You know, once you've got the CAD drawing, and then you can start printing out pieces and you can make subtle changes if somebody's looking for something a little bit different. But I think the other thing would be repeatability. You know, that's the thing. I look back at most of my years as a crew chief, no matter what we were making, whether it was something out of metal, something out of carbon fiber, something out of aluminum, it was so hard to repeat it, you know, because we were hand making everything. So I would say probably efficiency as well as repeatability.
I would have to agree with him. I think that's one of the benefits of 3D printing is being able to print something, it fail on you, you can junk it, go back to it, and then print it very quickly back again. I think that's the quick changes that you make, whether it be in a drawing or in CAD, and it's as simple as just pushing print.
So I can try design A. Design A didn't work, I'll go to B. B worked pretty well, but what if I tweaked B? So now I'm going to try B 2.0. Okay, that looked great. 2.1 is even better. This will allow these teams to iterate incredibly quickly, to innovate quickly, evaluate how well those designs worked, and then move on to the next design.
Let's be perfectly clear. To date, 3D printing in NASCAR is primarily used to produce parts for testing and experimentation in controlled environments, not the far less predictable conditions of an actual race. Nonetheless, there is currently a limited number of 3D parts used in live competition.
I believe that they're using them for the interior of the car, where they're not in a harsh environment. So something like a dashboard attachment or a shifter boot attachment, things of that nature. But what we're using 3D printed parts on the car, mainly on the exterior parts during our tests and during our wind tunnel tests and track tests. So I think that if you were 3D printing a part on a car on a Sunday, it would be maybe too harsh.
So a typical part that you would print is going to have to be about 12 inches by 12 inches, so it's size limited. It's probably at this point going to be non-structural, so it's not going to carry a load for the vehicle. It's not going to be safety related. It's going to be something like a duct, a bracket, a clip, maybe a panel cover. Particularly as you're looking at some of the electronics, I'll get you a custom panel cover for a new light that I installed, so my driver has some more situational awareness. That's a perfect use for the technology in its current state and current maturity.
Most of my years as a crew chief, whether it was a complete body of a race car whether it was a front end suspension part, whether it was just a part or a piece for the inside of the race car. It was so hard. If we found something that was good, especially like the full body of a race car, say it was a good Daytona or Talladega car, was a good downforce car, we didn't know how to repeat it. You know, we thought we could, you know, but everything was pretty much done with measuring tapes and kind of look at it and go, that's good, let's nail it right there. And then, of course, along came CAD drawings, and that certainly changed the game.
So an example of one of the big uses of 3D printers is we had a team come in and work on the design of a vehicle. Well, the design of the vehicle was always changing because of the numbers in the wind tunnel. So to quickly change the design of the car, we actually printed numerous amount of 3D parts to attach to the vehicle to kind of change the shape. So without 3D printing, that would kind of put us down for weeks and weeks, and being able to 3D print those parts and put them in the car and test them very quickly kind of gave us the numbers that we needed.
Like any business, a race team will always choose the fastest and most cost-effective methods to produce a car's necessary components. When and where 3D printing is the best choice, it will be used, and there's every reason to believe its role in NASCAR will increase as advancement in technology allows.
I would say there's a good chance in the very near future that a good half of the parts and pieces on that race car could probably come from 3D printing.
The current state of the art is limited by a few things: speed, size, and cost. So right now, you can do plastics, metals, some composites, but everything has its own limits. Every machine, every process has its goods and bads, and size is limiting.
The way that we are using 3D printing now is mainly in the prototyping design and test configurations. I think in our sport, in our industry, the racing environment is very harsh. It's side-by-side racing. It's, you know, you're trading paint, and the temperature conditions are really high to the point where if you use a 3D printer, it would not be a reliable source for you. Do I think it'll get there in the future? I do. With the improvement in technology and advancement of the materials that 3D printers will use, then I think in the years to come that we'll be using that on race day.
So I think the race day applications are still a few years away. 3D printing isn't particularly fast. Now, when I say fast, I mean a few hours for a small part, a few days for a large part. And so on race day to say, oh, this widget broke, we need a new one, if you don't have it on the shelf right then, you're probably done for the day.
Well, I have learned the hard way, being in NASCAR for 38 years, never say never. I never thought I'd see the day where we would be running fuel injection. I never thought I'd see the day where a car during the race weekend would pull into the garage area and a laptop computer would be plugged into it, and that's actually how you tune the race car. So I certainly couldn't say never.
I think one day, yeah, we're gonna have plastic printers, we're gonna have metal printers right next to the pits for race day support. That day's still a few years away.
I could probably more see it being in the haulers than maybe out there in the garage area, but just when you think you've seen it all in that NASCAR garage area, something else rears its head, and maybe it could be 3D printing.